it changes something about your life. Can't just push the reset button and go home. Well, there's nothing more alluring to me than a rude dirtbag.
Did you feel like you had something special on your hands? Like, do you remember the day you finished that in the studio?
Wow, if you actually knew what the actual reality of existing in this was.
Hello and welcome to the Eras podcast, where we get into the music and moments that have made your favourite artists who they are today. I'm your host, Abbie McCarthy, and today I'm joined by Lauren Mayberry, the frontwoman of chart-topping band CHVRCHES, who burst onto the scene back in 2012 with their huge synth-pop sound. We get into the adventures that she had with the band and what has led her into this new and bold solo era. You're not going to want to miss this one. It's a good one. Welcome to the Eras podcast, Lauren Mayberry. Hello.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. I am so excited about this. You've got over 12 years experience in the music industry, and that's not even counting the bands before CHVRCHES. This solo era, there's a lot to get into. So strap in, everybody. Let's do it. You're over here in London for a little while, but obviously you live in LA now. How long have you been there now?
I think 2019, and then I don't count 2 of those years, obviously, because nobody did anything. We were all inside. But yeah, for the time being.
And what's the most LA thing you think you've done? Are you green juicing? Are you yoga in the morning? Are you hiking just yet?
I don't really, when you say hike in Scotland, it means a very different thing to what
Yeah,
it means.
true.
So when people are going hiking, I'm like, really? Just like that? I don't know. I don't know if I tend to take part in a huge amount of the super LA things. I live with another British person about as far to the edge of it as you can get, but I have been to a couple of parties at the chateau.
Oh, okay.
So I think that's probably the most, and that was like around Grammy time. So it felt, I was like, just come visit these things, see them, and then leave.
I mean, how was that? There must have been some amazing people there.
It was I definitely felt very small and very foreign. And I was like, everyone's so healthy and tall. Like, yes, but I feel like that's part of the code, is that you go, you see, you put it into your eyes, you don't put it into your phone, and then you tell no one.
Yeah, exactly. Shh, that's it. So let's start at the very beginning of you getting into music. Those early bands I mentioned, how did they come about?
Well, I think I'd always listened to a lot of music, but it never really necessarily occurred to me to want to do it until I was in like my mid-teens probably. And for music at school, like higher music in Scottish schools, you have to do 2 instruments, and I was very conscious I didn't want to sing, because I feel like at school you were getting made to sing as part of choirs and things.
I remember
like that.
having to sing, and I'm awful.
I hated it. I didn't really like doing it, and then with that age and that self-consciousness, I just didn't want to do that in front of people. So I learned drums to be my second instrument. So I did piano and drums, and that was what I started playing in bands. And it was just, it was kind of through MSN. MSN was an instrumental part of that, which dates it quite a lot. But
The MSN era, though, shout out to that. What was your username? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I remember putting a lot of like bat emojis in it and like things like that. There was a lot of like obtuse like emo lyrics and things that didn't really need to be in there. But
slightly cryptic as well, so people would be like, "You okay, honey?"
Yes, and they'd be like, "Nothing, away, I'm away." But yeah, it was like friends of people that I worked in this restaurant with. They were like, "This band's just broken up, and he's looking for a new drummer." So I added him on MSN, and then we formed our little teenage band.
So that was Blue Sky Archives, or the band before your
before that.
So you had one band at school, one band at university.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And then
great.
Blue Sky Archives was kind of latter year of university. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's when you met Iain from CHVRCHES.
Yes, because Iain produced an EP for Blue Sky Archives, and then him and Martin from CHVRCHES had been working on some songs that they were maybe going to try and pitch for like publishing to try and get signed as like writers, and then we just made it a band instead, which is quite good. Yeah. So yeah, Iain had been like, would I go and sing those songs for them to pitch them? And then afterwards they were like, we'll just make a band.
And he hit the jackpot, because your voice is something else. I remember hearing The Mother We Share on Hype Machine back in the day. Mm-hmm. Remember that? All the hot new stuff. I was like, and just being like, damn, this is amazing. But when do you think you found your voice, or you kind of realised it was something special? Was it in those early bands maybe? I
think I'm kind of grateful that when I was singing in those bands, I wasn't the front person of them. Like in Blue Sky Archives, I sort of became a co-front person as time went on. But when I learned to sing as part of a project, it was very, very utilitarian. It was just, you need to sing this part as a backing vocal or to write it to show it to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of glad in a way that I wasn't really thinking about curating what kind of voice I will have. It just kind of comes out the way that it is. But it is interesting. I'm like, when I hear something back I've recorded or whatever, I can be very analytical about it like it's like a keyboard part. But I don't, to me, I feel, I'm like, it wouldn't be my first choice. But if people like it, then that's nice. Yeah,
Even still?
Yeah, I think I've gotten technically better at certain parts of singing, but to me, I'm always like, I need to do it again and make it less nasal and make it less this. But everybody always wants something that they don't have, you know?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
I'm like, to have a voice like Fiona Apple or like Liz Fraser or something. But then everybody else, you're always curating and critiquing yourself, I think.
Yeah, I do think that's sometimes part of being an artist as well. You guys just seem, perfectionists to your core. But it must be amazing now to reflect on the rise of CHVRCHES, because I imagine it was just a mad whirlwind at the time. You're writing, you're recording, you did a lot of touring. So you kind of look back now, what are the things that stand out to you? What are those like beautiful memories?
I do think it's been nice. Like now it's been 10 years since the first album, and around that time we did look back through the archives of the photos and the videos, and it is nice to look at that and see it more for what it was. Because at the time, as you say, everything was just quite mental, and we were like, quick, catch it, whatever it's doing. But I don't know. I think when I think about what are the memories that stick, most of the time it's not like shows or any of those those big moments. Like technically once I met Debbie Harry, that was very exciting. But obviously those things are amazing, but the things I kind of remember more are like a weird night off on tour where you were in a random part of America and you went to a bowling alley. And I feel like those are the things that actually stick in my head more, probably.
So it's almost in two categories. So maybe can you maybe pick a couple from each?
Oh,
I know people would love to hear this. So yeah, maybe some kind of like famous, slightly clangy name droppy. We're here for that. And then just those beautiful memories with the band, I guess.
I remember the first time we got to go to Mexico. It was very fun. We had a day off and we got to go to the pyramids that are like outside Mexico City, and like a bunch of the band and crew all went out and we did that. And I feel like we've done a lot of like odd tourist things together, which are nice because a lot of the time, also as time goes on, people want to do that stuff less. They're a little more jaded or a little more tired, and we definitely do a lot less going out and doing things than we used to. So I think, it's nice to think about those times when we were all full of vim and energy. That's good. And I guess when I think about like what will be the things that I remember about shows, it'll be stuff like the first time we played Glastonbury, or like I remember the first, was it the second album, I think, and we played like Reading and Leeds, and it was like a kind of sunset slot, and I can still kind of see that in my mind's eye. So things like that, I think.
I was there with my friends, absolutely living my best life.
So you remember? I was like, second album, I think. Second
that's
album.
A cool memory actually for me. So pretty incredible. How did you keep yourself grounded? Playing these big shows, having these huge moments. Is it just like a Scottish thing? Because I feel like a lot of Scottish artists I speak to, it's kind of just like maybe people just. Your friends and stuff don't let you get too big for your boots?
I mean, who's to say I could be a terrible c***? We don't know. We probably shouldn't have said. We'll beep that.
Off air, just awful.
I've been very lucky that I've got like a very solid core group of friends, which I've had from before the band and I still have now. And I think that's been nice. Like, I don't have a ton of industry friends, really. There's people I know, but I don't think I really spend a lot of time there. And even within Los Angeles, I'm like, we don't tend to spend a lot of time with people who are like dissecting the industry all the time. And I think that's nice. I think it's good to take your brain out of it and remember it's kind of a bunch of silly nonsense.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah. It's just a job at the end of the day, isn't it? It's trying to like actually, although it's a beautiful one, kind of keeping that distance, I suppose.
Yeah, I think so. And just taking the parts of it, because you can get really into an echo chamber of it, because it is like, it's not really a job that you turn off at 5 p.m. and like you can get really, there's definitely time periods of my life where I think I was too in my own head about it. But one of our managers likes to say it's PR, not ER.
That is good, yeah.
It's wise. Every so often I'm like, but the such and such as that. I'm like, doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
It's fine.
Calm down.
Yeah.
So
That is good. Yeah. That is a good thing to live by. So your debut single, we have to talk about The Mother We Share, because that came out and just connected in such a massive way quite instantly with people. And it's such a banger. Did you feel like you had something special on your hands? Like, do you remember the day you finished that in the studio and you were kind of like, you know what, this is something?
I remember there being loads of different versions of that song, and that was one of the first ones that Iain played me when he said that he'd been working on something with somebody. They had like the kind of original, no lyric-y demo for it, and there was just definitely like a quality to it and the shape of that melody. Even like in the demo, Martin was singing it, and like he's a really emotional demo singer. He really sells it in how emphatically he delivers stuff. And I don't really know if I knew like that one was the one necessarily. I think that song, I'm like, there's never a show that we'll play that we won't play that song, and I think that's a good thing.
I think it is, because the people would riot.
They'd be very upset. But yeah, I don't really subscribe to that anyway. Unless it's advertised as this is a specific show of a specific album, I kind of feel like it's, I don't know, a show is kind of about serving the other people, whereas your writing is serving you, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So when I go to a show and people are like, I don't want to play XYZ, I'm like, well, come on,
do the hits. You've got them in the locker.
If Paul McCartney's going to play Blackbird for everybody, we can play The Mother We Share. I think it'll be fine.
From that debut single to having huge success, 4 top 10 albums, is there a particular one that's got a special place in your heart? Obviously, all your musical babies, but if I put you on the spot, is there one that you've got like just a particular affection for?
I think I'm proudest of the 4th record because we made it under the strange circumstances.
Yeah.
And I think conceptually it was a bit more my perspective than some of the other ones. But I think when I listen to them, I think the first one is still my favourite. The Bones of What You Believe is still my favourite because there's like a purity to it that maybe that's just because I associate the other records with other things. But there's an innocence to it and a kind of naivety to it in a good way, I think, before we had seen too far through the looking glass, kind of.
Yeah.
I think.
Because you made those first 2 albums like just you guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then the 4th one as well. And the 3rd one was like a co-production. So half Iain and Martin, half Greg Kurstin and Steve Mack.
And did it feel good to switch things up at that point? Do you feel like you guys were open to it, or was it a bit like, what are you doing in my studio? This is weird. Like, was it an adjustment?
I think it was the right thing to do in terms of like we needed to learn other ways of operating, kind of. Just, I feel like so much of the time when you're a creative person, it is about like picking up inspiration and like feeding your brain with new ideas. And we did like 6 months in the studio, just the 3 of us, and it kind of felt like we hadn't cracked it yet. Mm-hmm. So then we wanted to open it up to other people. But I also do think that was a weird time period where there was a lot of pressure in that moment. Just the way the industry was working in that moment in time, they were like, take the thing you have and make it bigger, was kind of the push. Whereas I don't feel like people would say that now, because I don't think that radio works the same. The way that socials work and how songs are catching isn't the same.
Mm-hmm.
So I think now people will be like, but what's your unique perspective and how do we do that more? Rather than take this and just blow it up. So I kind of feel like we would use that opportunity differently now. And I don't know what the next CHVRCHES album will be, but I think if we do work with producers, it would be a different experience, I think.
And just to say, there will be future CHVRCHES albums, right? We
signed up for them, yes. And everybody wants to do them, so we don't know when, because we're doing many things.
Yeah.
But yes, that's definitely on the cards. It's in the plans, but we haven't officially written down the start date for it.
I loved that last album as well. He Said, She Said. I think actually it's my favourite CHVRCHES song.
Thank you. That's very nice of you.
It's incredible. Like everything that
it
stands for, though, it feels important, doesn't it?
Thank you. That's nice of you to say. I think, yeah, when I look at that, I'm like, just had it up to Heido. Probably, I was like, it had to start to come out in the writing somewhere, I think. So I'm glad that it came out in a way that didn't feel forced or something.
And also your collaboration you did with Robert Smith from The Cure as well.
Yes.
Incredible.
No biggie, yeah. Why wasn't that in my number ones of that year?
Yeah. Is it almost so surreal you blocked it out?
I mean, it still feels bizarre that happened, especially because it came about during peak pandemic times, and we would send Robert Smith emails, which feels like a weird thing to be able to do. But he's been very good to us. He's been so kind and just truly a proper artist.
He's a real one. That's nice to hear.
And he is really nice to. I've only heard nice things about any band that he likes, young band. Not that we're young, but young, yeah.
You're young, babe.
He's just really supportive and incredibly kind to people, and I think that, he's you can put him in the good camp. There's a lot. It's a tough time these days.
Yes.
For knowing which of the OGs you can keep, but I think, touch wood, you can keep Rab.
And what's he like on email? I'm trying to imagine his tone.
Funny, dry, all caps.
All caps.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, great.
But it feels purposeful. It feels intentional.
Yeah.
That he hasn't just left the caps on. But he's very generous. He is a very nice guy.
And you've had some great collaboration moments. Bury It with Hayley Williams, working with Matt from The National. You did some BVs for Death Cab for Cutie, which is just an emo dream. I always want to know, though, how these collaborations actually come about. Is it just a slide into the DM situation? Is it you're kind of being introduced through mutual friends, or is it different for each person, I suppose?
I feel like we've been lucky that it's all been quite natural the way it's come about. The Hayley was just because she had come to a show that we'd played, and then she'd mentioned that song was her favourite. So next time we played in Nashville, I'd been like, I'll just message her and see if she wants to sing it at the show. And then it kind of evolved from there. And I think The National, we'd met through festivals, and we'd played some stuff with them. I'd sung with them a couple of times. So we were like, well, just ask. If you don't ask him. And in turn, he's got one of the most iconic voices of this generation, I think. So we were like, well, just ask him. And then Death Cab, again, we just played shows with them. Mm-hmm. And it's nice that those things have always been just because you've kind of become friends with people, rather than set up by the label. You should talk to this person, and
shoving you in a room and hoping for the best. Yeah.
And I'm sure that sometimes great opportunities can come from that, and that would be very exciting. But we've always just been a little nosy and asked the questions of people we already knew, I guess.
Yeah, always ask. That's the thing, isn't it? Would you like to do more writing with other artists or for other artists?
I don't know. I think in the solo era, there was a lot of writing with different people to find the people that you connected with, and I think that's been really good for developing my brain and my writing. But it's kind of shown me that I don't really like writing for somebody that's not me necessarily. Unless it's a specific project. It's quite fun to take on a particular voice for. I was about to drop a clanger that I'm not allowed to drop, but for a specific character that is not you. Mm-hmm. But whenever I've done writing for other artists, I find it, especially younger female artists, I find that exciting. I kind of feel like my role is almost getting other people to be quiet enough to be what do you want to do? Which I don't even know if that's a very good writing skill. I feel like I'm just kind of monitoring the room in a way that I wish it had been monitored for me sometimes.
Yeah, so that's so nice.
Every so often, if I'm you're trying to say something and he's talking over you, then I'd be like, do you actually like it? You can tell him if you don't like it. Things like that. But I don't think that's necessarily, I don't know if that's
I think that's a great skill,
co-writing.
Because
it's just being bossy.
Yeah, no, it's just young women often walking into a studio that's full of men, like you say, and feeling can they get their ideas across?
Yeah, and I think it's hard enough to create anything anyway, and there needs to be a sense of safety and vulnerability to do that. And sometimes studios don't feel like that. And then you're not coming up with the goods, but it's very hard to create an environment that feels combative, I think. Mm-hmm. So, but then I'll come away from those writing days and be like, I don't really know what I did in there, really. I just was like, this is your idea, follow your idea, go. Don't listen.
Follow your gut.
Don't listen to him. But yeah, I don't know if that's a ton of that in my future, but maybe, who knows?
And as a band, you became really quickly known for your live shows, but I dug out, I think it was one of your earliest sessions. Oh. It was you on Radio 1, and you're so young and so unassuming. I
remember wearing a scarf and a hoodie. Why?
Yeah, you're sort of almost hiding.
It's not that cold inside.
Hiding under the scarf and stuff. And I thought, is it fair to say it took a while for you to grow into being a front person and owning it?
Yeah, I think so. At that point, I'd never fronted a band in that way, and I'd never just done singing. I'd always been playing an instrument, and we were so lucky that things happened so quickly. But it was pretty intense, and I was pretty young. I was 23, 24, and the guys in the band were a bit older than me, they were a bit more experienced. But now talking to them, they're like, we surpassed our experience level really quickly, but it didn't feel like that to me. I think I was just conscious that I didn't know what I was doing a lot of the time. And then we went from like 0 to 100 pretty fast. And people are naturally comparing you to other things of that ilk, which I'm like, I haven't ever had a vocal lesson. I don't know anything about movement coaching or things I know about now, which I didn't know about then. So yes, there's a lot of very awkward early album stuff. You don't see my hands a lot. They're like always my hands are up
the
sleeves,
Arthur clenched fist,
or like holding the mic stand, and yeah. But I was just white knuckling it, but it was fine.
I mean, now the stage is where you're meant to be. Like, you just look so at home. Do you feel that now? Do you just feel really confident as you're walking out?
I think it is like a created. It's kind of like I've split my brain into two parts. Like, I was talking about this with a friend the other day, and then she was like, "You're an extroverted introvert," and I was like, "Huh?" And then I thought about it. I was like, actually, that does kind of make sense, because in any social setting, I don't necessarily want to be. I think there's certain people that have that quality and that charisma, and they walk into a room and they just captivate everybody, and they have it, and they like having it, and they can hold it. I've never had that. Like, I feel like I'm always like just trying. I'm trying very hard all the time. But I think with the performance stuff, it was like practice and separating it out. So it is like almost not disassociative, but it's like, this is an entity, and I drive it onto the stage, and then I drive it around for like 90 minutes, and then I leave.
And then you sort of park it, and then you go back to your life. I wondered that, actually. Like, do you find it hard to separate, real life Lauren from front person Lauren Mayberry? Has that ever been something that's difficult, like finding that balance?
I think it was very difficult at the start of it, because I don't think any of us were prepared for how quickly that really blew up. And now there's a lot of things that are part of the job that I understand better. But I feel bad about certain, in the first album era, I think I probably seemed quite rude to a lot of people that would meet us outside venues, but it was just so uncomfortable as a concept. And I didn't really know what to do with it. Like, I was like, oh God, don't look at me. Oh, sorry. But I know that, like, now I'm like, that's not what people want you to do in that instance. It's not. I think it was still so new, and I was so young that it felt like icky, or like it was about me. But then now I'm like, it's not really about me. It's about what the music represents to people, and I'm kind of the mascot of that, kind of. So you are the concept when you talk to those people. So just be in, not character, but kind of a little bit. And like, that is your job in that moment, is to facilitate that for somebody. So I think I have a better handle on it now.
Mm-hmm. And we should get into the solo era, because the fans are excited. How long has there been a pull to do this?
I think it would come up every so often where I'd be like, oh, that would be cool to do, but we wouldn't do that here. Or like, think of a certain song concept, or a certain lyrics that just don't really work in the CHVRCHES universe. Because even though I'm the narrator of the band, it's still very much a collective thing, and the guys have been really great at making space for me to come up with those narratives. But I also do need to kind of speak out, like, it has to be something that everybody's down with and co-signs on. So I would say when we started back up touring again after our first COVID tour, I was like, I think I want to do that.
It's time.
And there was a lot of grappling with that before that, because, I just was like, oh, this is going to cause so many problems to do this. It's going to cause problems. And is it worth causing those problems in order to do the thing that you want? Just not even internally, but externally as well. I feel like the narrative of female singer puts out solo album, it just pisses some people off. It worries some people for like nice reasons, because they love the band. Mm-hmm. But I do think there's connotations with it that are different, maybe. I don't know.
So when you were like, okay, I definitely want to do solo music, are you like a mood board person?
I love a mood board.
Okay, great. So we're looking at this board. What's on there? Like, what were the inspirations?
I think initially I just wanted stuff to be a little bit more dramatic than it can be in the band universe. Just a little bit more theatrical, and a little bit, like, I just kind of got to a point where I felt like my my gender and my femininity was always talked about at me all the time. It was like part of the conversation from the first second we ever stepped in front of a camera, and that wasn't my doing. And then I think I gave me quite an odd relationship with myself, with my gender, with my physical self. Never been more aware of the things that are right and wrong with my body until I started doing this job. And that's quite just like, I think that's quite twisty for the brain.
Especially so young as well.
And I think now people would think about it slightly differently than we did then. Like even the other day, I got like the cover for the new single through, and I looked at it and I was like, I got teary-eyed in the park. And I was like, I don't want to put this out because I just know the way that, like, I look at that picture and I scan it with like nice normal eyes, and then I scan it with the what would people say about this image eyes, and I was like, I don't want to do that because they're going to call me a fucking fat slag on the internet, and I don't want to do that. And then I was like, well, that's irrational because I look at that, but it's all those things that you're insecure about yourself, then people start like pointing them out, and you don't need to. That's what I would say, guys. You don't need to.
People could be nice on the internet. That would be fab,
you don't
wouldn't
need
it?
to talk about. You just think it in your head. If you must, don't have to tell somebody. So I don't know. I think things like that was like it became clear to me that I need to try and get a better handle on this, and what would it have been like if I hadn't been in a very, very male environment for all of that time. So a lot of the mood boarding was like, how can I push myself to be more present in myself, present in my creative brain and in my body, in the performance and things like that.
And then Are You Awake felt like such a great, like, bold choice. It was like, okay, piano ballad. Like, it was just such a great surprise.
Scary.
Was it? Was it for you? Terrifying.
I liked that it was something so different from CHVRCHES, and I think that's the point of this. Like, to me, I'm not trying to take the band's sound and do it somewhere else. Like, we have that, we built that together. That's separate. It's ring-fenced in a safe space. But yeah, I like the idea that the first thing that people would hear would be my voice in like such a different context than what people are used to it being in. So, yeah.
And you worked on this with Tobias Jesso Jr.
I did, yes.
The first ever Grammy-winning songwriter of the year. That was pretty cool.
Well done.
Yeah.
Good job.
What's his studio like? Is it immaculate vibes?
It's just like really chill and laid back. It's just like a room like in the downstairs section of his house, and it's got a piano in it.
So just super.
And like when we wrote the song like in an afternoon, and that doesn't normally happen for me, but like the lyrics came very quickly, and it was just like us sitting and him playing at a piano and then batting ideas back and forth. And it wasn't like, a lot of the time, especially in Los Angeles, when you do a writing session, it's like it's a big studio with shiny things and all these gadgets. And like, I ultimately think I figured out the way that I like writing best in the solo era is very much like you and a piano or you and a guitar, just people sitting trying to write the song first, don't write the production first. And I think that's been quite different.
The lyricism on it is amazing. I love Hometown Hero is a poison chalice choice. So what's this about? Is it about missing Scotland?
I think I was definitely in a homesicky mood when I was writing it, but I think that lyric for me is like the place that, like, we've been so lucky to have all the things we've had, but it changes what it's like to go home, for better or worse. Like, it changes some of the people. Like, I always think that, well, maybe that's not true. I don't feel like I changed the way I looked at things, but I think people change the way they see you, kind of. And not like the core people who I'm lucky to have around me, but it does, even with the best of intentions, it changes something about your life. So you can't just push the reset button and go home, because it doesn't. It's just everything's slightly altered. Yeah, I think they're just conscious that there's a pressure on it after that. If you're lucky enough to have your band work, then there is an expectation. There's, you're always, I think that's why I've had to reframe it so much and try and not think about what people think about it as much as possible, because as soon as there's an expectation, you're always like, at some point you're going to disappoint someone. You're going to get something wrong, or it's not going to be subjectively what that person wants. Or so, yeah, the trajectory cannot just be constantly up and always pleasing people more and more and more, which is something that I think my little brain likes to do. I'm like, people please, and shows it and be like, tell me I'm the goodest boy.
Why do we do this? People please is the worst, isn't it?
Well, and then I'm like, not lost on me that I'm like, and what you do for a living is ask people to clap for you and tell you that you're good. Like, okay.
So almost when you're in this creative space, you're trying not to think about this this external noise. But did the songs form quite naturally in this solo era? Did the ideas like just start pouring out?
Yeah, I think at the start there must have been a lot of stuff like in the bucket, and there was a lot to come out. So yeah, I think that was good. And then it's trickier once the songs start to come out, because then you're like, I just don't ever want to know. I don't think it's good for me to know anything about anything, to be honest. Like in terms of like promotional stuff, even like, I just want to like put it out.
It's done.
And not think about it. Because then I just think you get too over analytical of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're not. I think you need to kind of create in a little vacuum as much as you can.
I was having a little stalk of the songwriting credits because I love to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew Koma, obviously your main collaborator.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that creative relationship sort of thrives so well?
I think we're very aligned on like tastes and things like that. And I do think like that was a real like writing masterclass for me in terms of like he's a very lyricsy guy. And that was fun because I guess in CHVRCHES that's not the huge focus a lot of the time, so it was quite fun. That was my main thing I wanted to do in the solo time of my life. In the solo time, I want to be able to be about the stories first.
Yeah.
So it's been fun to get into that with somebody else. And yeah, we do a lot of like, what am I trying to say though? What am I trying to say? And I don't think that's been new for me. To when you're stuck on a part of a verse 2, you're like, wait, what were we saying so far? And then you go down it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just nice to tell stories and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think lyrically is where you're shining in this solo era. So that's so interesting to hear. Like, I love the really sarcastic edge there is to Shame.
Oh, thanks.
It's laced with it, isn't it? So yeah, what's this one all about?
Well, I had the title idea for a long time and I was like, it'd be really fun to write something with, oh, what a shame, being the tagline, and have that be a little tongue-in-cheek. And I think it was referencing some of the stuff we were talking about having spent so much time in an environment which wasn't really designed for me, and kind of fitting into those spaces and realising how that's kind of pickled your brain in some ways, whether that's like how I've learned to exist in my professional life or how I exist in my personal life. Like, and now I'm very lucky to have a very nice partner who's very nice to me, but that was just a complete happy accident. It's not that I changed any of the ways I make decisions or what I find alluring. There's nothing more alluring to me than a rude dirtbag. But it's not on purpose. It's like, it's just in there. And I feel like when I look back on like how I was treated by men in my life, romantically and otherwise, mm-hmm. there's a lot of like, it's quite wonky, a lot of that. Mm-hmm. And I think like I zoom out of certain things. I'm like, wow, like the humiliation was so baked into the essence of what so many of those interactions were. Whether it's like, you know, people that like the certain kind of guy that like negs you as part of the flirting, or like men, like dudes in bands or in studios that would just, if I didn't know something, they would take the piss out of me. And like, yeah, when I think about it, I'm like, I can kind of, I'm like, there's a lot of like laughing at me. That feels quite bad when I think about those memories. And now I'm like, okay, that feels bad for anybody, but especially when you're at that age and at that stage, like professionally, creatively, or romantically. That's not good baggage to put in your bag of baggage.
No, but put your baggage in a pop song.
Put your baggage in a pop song and be like, isn't it fun that we've all got weird, terrible tastes that we probably shouldn't have, but oh well.
That must be cathartic though, getting that off your chest in a song.
I think so. And then I wish I could say that I'm like, I've changed. But I think maybe I'm just more conscious of it now. That's
something, at least.
Yeah, small victories.
And Change Shapes is a belter. It's the kind of song I've had in my head for weeks, like a proper earworm. I always read into what I think the songs are about. I thought maybe it was about you kind of feeling a bit more scrutinised in the band than maybe your male counterparts.
Yeah, I think that's, part of it. And I don't know, there's definitely been times in my career in the band where I felt quite hypocritical, because I feel like so much of the narrative around the band is about it being very forthright and very feminist, and that wasn't necessarily my experience of it a lot of the time. Whether that's, you know, business stuff, promo stuff, internal stuff, whatever. Like, there's definitely been times where I've been singing those songs at shows and seeing people connect with those songs, and then I want to be like, it's all a bunch of shit. Like, not shit, not that the songs are shit, but then I'm like, wow, if you actually knew what the actual reality of existing in this was, that would be quite different. And then it makes me feel bad because I'm like, oh, am I peddling like something that's not true? And like, but I think that's just the dichotomy of being a woman in the universe, is that like, it can't be purely one thing or the other. It's always going to be a bit of a muddle of stuff, and it doesn't make it not true to have adopted that persona in those spaces, but it's unrealistic to think that that's true all the time.
But
what
now,
a fun thing to write a song about.
But now it must be so nice to just say and make things on your terms, and like you say, kind of reconnect with those different parts of your identity that maybe you've kept hidden for a little while. Yeah,
like I think, I don't even know, a lot of the time it feels like finding that for the first time almost, not even like reconnecting with it. So there's definitely been a lot of like growing pains and discomforts, and I think it's been really good for me makes me extra appreciate certain things about the band and about Iain and Martin and how great they are at certain things that I am not great at. So when it's just me alone, I'm like, oh, I have to approve the mix. Just me. Like, no. Like, there's supposed to be like really intelligent, thoughtful, creative audio lords across this. And then I'm supposed to like worry about the storytelling and worry about... So yes, there's definitely... It showed me my own weaknesses a lot, but it showed me to have other strengths.
So who is your sounding board now? Like when you finished a song, who are you kind of playing it to? Who's that person who will be, really honest with their feedback?
Just take them and put them in a box and never play them. I think Boyfriend's a pretty good barometer because he doesn't have a good poker face. He's not very good at fibbing. Okay.
So you're like, oh, that line didn't land.
Yeah, or just like, yeah, if he's like, yeah, then I'm like,
oh, that's the worst response, isn't it? Where they're not even being mean, they're just like...
And I think, yeah, because like he's a musician, he's a credible musician also, but I like trust... I've realised I have a lot of trust issues, Abbie. I don't trust a lot of people to tell you I don't know. Like, he knows my tastes, and I think that helps. And like, he doesn't have anything to gain or lose out of it. So I think that helps. And we have really good managers who have like really, they know what they get me. So when I play them things, like we give honest responses. But even then, I'm like, you don't want to widen the circle too much, because then I feel like...
So confusing.
Yeah. And I'm like, I just want to get a pile of songs and then send them all at once rather than one at a time, because then it feels like everything you're writing is getting analysed or something, and that's quite weird.
Yeah. So that feels quite heavy, I suppose, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
But definitely, like, if I have a demo I'm excited about, I'm like, I take it home first, and then I'm like,
And do you ever test it in different spaces? Like, I've heard artists do like the car test, or they'll play it out of like almost like their phone or their laptop speakers where it doesn't sound as crisp, but just to see if it still works, basically.
I do that with mixes and stuff, like just to see, because a lot of the time you're like, well, a lot of people aren't going to sit down with professional speakers and listen to a song like that. So I'm like, I do it on the AirPods, do it at the phone, do it in the car, and then just check it in that way. But I do think, there's a good test. If you've written a song, you're really excited about it, I always try and be like, don't take it home, don't listen to it tonight. Come back tomorrow with fresh ears and see if if it's as exciting. Because sometimes you do get a bit lost down the garden path. Mm-hmm. Like I remember once in a CHVRCHES session, I was thinking that we were like, oh my God, we've written it.
This is it, guys.
This is the song of the summer. This is going to be insane. And we came back the next day and we were like, oh, it sounds like Dario G. No offense to Dario G, but we were like, they've already done that, and that's not what we thought we were doing. So we learned a lot.
I'm really excited to hear the recorded versions of songs that I've heard you play live. Sorry, etc. Under the Knife, particularly. So what can you tell our listeners about the rest of the album and what to expect? Not full on spoiler alert, of course, but
it is this many tracks long. No, I mean, I'm really grateful that people wanted to come to those early shows and were willing to wait for the songs to get finalised. And that's just such a different way of doing it than anything we've done in the band for a long time. So it felt nice to have things be more informal. And obviously then there's a risk that you're like, is that too long before the lit record comes out? And what if people get really married to the live versions? But those two are finished. We recorded some some bass for Sorry, Etc. the other day.
Oh,
so
amazing.
It's good. But yeah, I'm hopeful that they'll both stay in there. We're kind of getting to the final stages of like collecting all your favourite children and then choosing who gets to go on and who stays for B-sides, and yeah.
How did it feel like performing to a crowd, like you say, that didn't really know any of the songs? I guess the atmosphere in the room is quite different. You're used to CHVRCHES gig, everyone arms in the air, singing every word, very much there to see a particular song or two, or, with their friends. And that's a different thing. Did it just mean that they were really like patient and really kind of in the room?
Yeah, it was definitely a different sensation. I think that for me it felt more, I don't know, it felt like a very genuine experience, that people had come out of like curiosity or support or investment in the thing. And it did feel more like I have to showcase this. Because I do think, you're asking a lot of a fan base. They really like this thing already. Mm-hmm. Don't mess with it. Like, I think that's asking, it's asking a lot of people to want to be open to something new. So I don't know. I liked that it kind of felt like I have to show you that I'm taking it seriously and this is what it is. And if you like it, then that would be great. And if you don't, then that's fair. So yeah, it was nice. I felt very grateful that people were open to it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and sounding, as I say, really strong live. And it was great to see the band, obviously all female and non-binary. Was that, important to you? And does that mean the tour bus is a lot of fun?
The tour bus is definitely a different vibe. It's a different vibe. But I was very conscious of that. Just because there's so many vocals on the record, I really wanted a lot of those to be able to be done live. And just to kind of purposefully curate a different experience for myself on the road. And even I'm lucky to be in a band with really nice people who are very conscious and they listen to me about things. But it is the emotional labor thing of most of the time when something's upsetting, they don't necessarily, that's not upsetting to them in that way, or
they just wouldn't experience it in the same way.
Yes, and then you have to, I feel like there's a lot of translating your experience, and it's just been nice to be around people. We don't need to do that. We already know each other's lived experience because we're in it. So
just that mutual understanding. So let's compare the two tour buses and how different they are.
There's a lot more scented oil diffusers on this
fabulous
bus. And there's a lot of people getting each other presents, which sounds like, everybody's getting each other. This very nice.
This is cute.
Yes, there's a lot of there's little sheet masks on people's beds, or little if you go to the shop, you get everybody a little chocolate or whatever. And it might not
surprise from the shop. It's one of my favourite things. I think that might be one of my love languages.
Get gifts and
it's just
gifts.
Great.
That's your one. But yeah, and the thing is it feels like a different I've learned. I think the band guys have tried to learn to speak Lauren, and I've tried to learn to speak Iain and Martin. And we've figured it. We can try to code switch into each other's spaces, but it's just not as immediate necessarily. So if I give them sheet masks, I don't think they want that. But I know that they don't want that, so I get them something else.
Did you ever feel a bit like you had to be kind of one of the guys a little bit more? Yeah,
I look back on certain time periods and I definitely made a lot of jokes or laughed along to a lot of things that are not naturally where my brain would go. And yeah, I think it was trying to fit in thing. And because I was the only woman on the road for so much of that, or we had a female tour manager for certain parts of it. But other than that, most venues, most radio stations, most places that you went to, it was all older guys all the time.
Yeah.
And that's quite odd. So I think I just wanted, I don't know, I spent a long time being I don't want people to see me differently. I really just want to fit in. I want them to think I'm the same, and I want people to treat me like I'm the same. But now I'm well, it wasn't the same, and it didn't feel the same. And yes, the reasons you were separated out and the way that you're separated out, it wasn't ideal. But then now I'm no wonder they don't understand me, and I don't understand certain things they do because we're not the same, and that's fine.
I feel like you're known as much for being an amazing lyricist and artist as you are for being an advocate for women in music. It's always you're kind of always in the conversation. You're someone who always stands up for what they believe in. And I think that's really powerful because, you're an amazing artist, but you're an even better person. I think, what you did early in your career.
No.
I remember, the Big Guardian piece, which was 2013, just before the band's debut album. that must have been so daunting at that point to put yourself out there and say something.
I think almost it was less daunting then than it is now because I didn't have any idea of the consequences of those things.
Yes, okay.
So not to like belittle like my intentions, but I think now I'm much more aware of the shit you get made to eat on the other end of it. And like, you know, like there's not a conversation that passes now without those topics coming up, which I think is great, and I'm glad that we did that. But you know, there's certain points in my career where I've been like, man, I would really love if people wanted to talk to me about the music, because a lot of the time that doesn't happen. And I think a lot of the time, I don't know, certain kinds of journalists really, they already know what they want to say, and they already know what they want you to say, the sound bites, and they want to put a little mascot in there. And sometimes it does feel a bit crazy to me that I'm like in low ebbs, I've been like, the most interesting thing about me is what other people think about me in terms of interviews. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, even like when the documentary came out, there was articles around that were the BBC, even though they were supposed to be on it. And the headlines were like, my decade of death threat, rape threat, hell. And I was like, that's missing the point of it, guys.
What I said.
And then I was like, you could talk about the documentary if you wanted. It's like last, it was like right down the bottom. But I understand why that is, and it's like, you know, it's a clickbaity culture, and that's going to get people to click on that. And it is a part of the documentary, but it's not the whole thing. And then sometimes I'm like, maybe the art's not very good because nobody ever wants to talk about it. Not you, obviously. But like sometimes
no, I'm here to talk about it.
when you're knackered and, you know, very lucky to have this job, but sometimes it's pretty lonely. It's like quite, and if all anybody ever wants to talk about, it's like, isn't it sad that people say they want to rape you? And I'm like, I did make a record as well, though.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about it. But I don't know, I'm very glad that is part of the band's identity, and I wouldn't change that. And it's helped me find my people.
And I'm glad, because honestly, as a young person, I think you were kind of one of the first people I saw in music just being like, you know what, that's actually not okay.
And it wasn't, I don't know, it is weird to think back on that time, like it wasn't as in vogue then. Not in vogue, but like, I think there was definitely other female musicians I would talk about that with in pubs, but then they didn't feel the need to do that within their work, and that's totally their prerogative. But it's interesting that now I feel like if you didn't say anything about something, people would be more upset, which I think is also risky.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, I do feel like the music industry's come, a little bit of a way, because I guess when you were starting out, it was just like a sea of men, wasn't it? Press being very misogynistic. The dials definitely moved a little bit. Do you think?
I think even like the standard. Because a lot of the time, like some of the weirdest stuff that's been written about me has been written by women. But then, you know, we've all got our own internalized misogynies, and I have those. No judgment. But I think, the tone of the conversation is different now than it was. Like when I think about some of the things that were written about us, I'm like, I don't think you couldn't write that about like a 24-year-old girl now.
As in everyone would just stand up and be like, no, that's not fine.
Yeah, like I don't think that people would. Or that, when you handed that into an editor, they'd maybe be like, well, I don't know if we should say that.
Maybe don't do that.
Like, and I think that's positive. And like, obviously, like, I'm in a very privileged position. I'm a straight white woman. So I think the fact that we've opened conversations beyond, you know, white feminism kind of bullshit. So, I think that's good.
Yes.
So we can move past that as well. So
there's a lot of like great communities and platforms building now to kind of amplify, whether it's female artists, trans artists, non-binary artists. And there's a couple that I'm sort of involved in London. There's one called Loud London. The Name Game sort of run nights to get different people into music. And obviously you had a night yourself. You had like a platform and a collective that you started. So tell us about that.
I've got the shitty tattoo, guys. It's my only tattoo, and it's not very good, but I love it. Well, it was like in Glasgow in 2011. I think we started it, and it was called TYCI, and it was like a club night.
Sorry, what does that stand for, by the way?
We wouldn't call it that now.
Oh, okay. So we'll just skim over that.
Well, it was like a phrase that somebody had said that a friend of theirs had come up with, and it stands for tuck your cunt in, and it's just like, it's meant to be like, get your shit together, get on with it, like man up, sort of. But I get things like that, and I'm like, oh yeah, there's certain parts of that didn't age that well, because we would never call it that now. But we were just conscious of wanting to create a space where like female and queer and non-binary artists can like get booked and then know it's a safe environment. And we had like specific briefing that we would give the security, and just to be so that you can go and like perform and go and experience music and not be thinking and worrying about things all the time, and just putting those artists at the front of that conversation for once. Because most of my experience was I'm the only girl on the bill, and people are like, oh, well done. And I'm like, no, I don't want to be. Like when I was 17, 18, that felt weird and it felt uncomfortable, and I just always really wanted other people to have a kind of community with or camaraderie with. And so I was like, gotta make it then.
Yeah.
Gotta make friends by putting an advert on the internet.
Yeah, it's like if you don't see it, go out and make it and do it, I guess. And it must have been so important for you at that point, that sense of community.
Yeah, I think so. I think without that, I think the band stuff would have felt even more overwhelming and isolating. The main core people who were involved in that are still like some of my best friends to this day. So yes, now we have like a Christmas cheese night instead.
Oh, love that. How sophisticated.
I mean, it starts sophisticated and it does not. That's
and then
where
the wine kicks in.
And that's when you do tattoos in people's kitchens and you shouldn't. So it's not safe. It's not hygienic.
Oh, this is a kitchen jobby, is it?
It is, yeah. It's a bit blobby at the end.
Yeah.
You can see you're now. Like, and the drunkenness increased towards the end. So, but I'm like, it's fine. Well, as time goes on, I feel like it'll get, like, as my arms age, it'll get soaked up into the elbow, and then I'll just reveal it every so often. It's my plan.
So that's such a nice, like, past memory to look back on. But what do you think your future era looks like? Lauren Mayberry, fill us in.
I don't know. I mean, I'm excited to put this album out because it's been a long time in the making. Like, technically I've been working on it for like over 2 years, but in between churches things, so It's not dedicated 2 years.
Is that difficult as well, sort of switching headspace between the two, whereas now it's a bit more dedicated and focused?
I find it was quite useful in a way, because that when it was like made me appreciate the churches touring in a different way, but then it was good to have the two sides of the brain working. I find it harder to do like promo and write. It's quite hard. Like this week I'm doing a bit of both. So I'm like, don't word vomit too much, but then don't go into the studio and be like, nothing. Like it's hard to find the balance sometimes, I think.
Do you ever get writer's block, just days where you're just like, I can't. Yeah. I've got nothing left.
Yes. And then I do become a dramatic baby when that. And I'm like, I can't get it. Oh, and I'm like, oh, this is the end. It's run out now. And definitely I act like a kind of old movie starlet around the house where I'm like, it's over, I can't write anything. Oh no, and I'm letting everybody down by not being able to write anything. And then my boyfriend's like, it just happens though. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. Not like this. You don't understand. You're not being very empathetic. And then the next day I'm like, I fixed it.
It's back on.
So I don't know. I read a thing Nick Cave said once where he doesn't really like to think about it as the words are blocked. He's like, they just haven't arrived yet.
That is a nice spin, isn't it?
And I was like, oh, that's very Nick Cave. That's lovely.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That is a good soundbite. What are your ambitions with this solo project? Are you kind of setting them out because you've kind of got the band to refer it to, or are you just kind of like, let's enjoy it, be present and see what happens?
I think for me, I'm kind of conscious that what Churches has is like a very unique and very special thing. So I wouldn't ever want to try and recreate that because it just seems like that wouldn't be possible to do. So to me, I'm like, my main goal was to get some more self-confidence and self-respect when it comes to like creating and just, figure out what does that look like when I'm not in a very specific context. And then to me, being able to have something feel sustainable in that space is more than I would have wanted. So, yeah.
How many Lauren Mayberry albums do you think we're going to get?
I don't know. I said to my friend the other day, I was like, I would like to have 2 solo albums and be back in the UK by the time I'm 40. And she was like, that's very specific, but that's the goal.
Yeah, that's great.
So, I don't know. But I think I read like a Dolly Alderton quote where she said that she likes to write down like short-term, mid-term, long-term goals like once a year and then look at it and then be like, oh, I don't care about that now. Don't care about that now.
Yeah.
Oh, and I did do that and I did do that. And just kind of like not overly curate your existence, but just checking in with the past versions of yourself and what you actually want. So yeah, I'll circle back to that in a year and see. But I was like, I'd like to be a train ride away from my mum and have another record, I think, and a Churches album in between.
Yeah, of course.
So,
and you want to be doing this forever?
I mean,
If you're coming on with a little stick, people are wheeling you on, you're like,
no more
I'm ready.
head banging, just head banging gently. I mean, I guess that's not really up to me to decide, is it? Like, we can hope, but yeah, hopefully there's more life in the old dog yet.
Let's hope so. I'm very excited to see where this solo era comes. Lauren Mayberry, thank you so much. I knew it was going to be a treat, but Lauren Mayberry, everybody.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed that conversation with Lauren. Thanks to her for being so honest and open. We are building a great community of music fans here on the Eras podcast. So hit subscribe and let us know what you think in the comments right now. This has been a Good Karma production at Metropolis Studios. We'll see you next week.